Did Conor Benn know that Eubank Jr. was damaged goods? Now, I asked this question because I always found it a very strange move for Conor Benn to want to fight Eubank Jr. I know there's this rivalry between the two families, but it's the timing of it. Normally, when a fighter makes this kind of deviation where they step up basically 2 weight divisions to take on somebody much bigger, it's when they've already fought for a world title or when they currently hold a world title. But with Conor Benn, that wasn't the case. He was being moved very well, being managed well. They were taking these gradual incremental steps up, and he was passing every test with flying colors. So rather than continue on and have the first big risk of his career being in a world title fight, they instead wanted Eubank Jr. And it's even more strange from a promoter's perspective because, yeah, Conor Benn is a fighter and fighters think they can do all sorts of stuff. But the promoter is supposed to be the one with a level head who's got the fighter's best interest at heart and maybe sees things that the fighter can't see because the fighter's ego gets in the way. So a lot of people were speculating that Eddie Hearn was cashing Conor Benn out with the Chris Eubank Jr. fight because, again, they were struggling to understand why Eddie Hearn would put him in that fight. But in light of what happened to Eubank Jr., his punch resistance seemingly disintegrating overnight, maybe Eddie Hearn and Conor Benn knew that Eubank Jr. was damaged goods. It's a question, but I'm certainly open to the possibility that they did because they seem very confident about that fight. And Conor Benn was talking about stopping Chris Eubank Jr. Again, I know fighters always come out with bravado and hyperbole in the build-up to things, but in this instance, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, was there a rumor that Eubank Jr. got knocked out in sparring? Because the circuit in British boxing is relatively small. A lot of the same people that spar in, let's say, the gyms that Conor Benn frequents are going to be sparring in the gyms that Eubank frequents. And a lot of talk gets around. If someone gets hurt or dropped in sparring, news travels fast on the boxing circuit. So again, I don't have any inside info on that, but I'm just wondering, because if that is the case, it may explain or go some way to explaining why Conor Benn and Eddie Hearn were so keen on the Eubank Jr. fight. If they knew he was damaged goods, that he was getting hurt or dropped or knocked out, and maybe Senior knew, because I always found it a little strange that Senior was so concerned about his son, Eubank Jr., taking on Conor Benn, a man much smaller than him, a man less experienced, a man who hadn't fought at such a high level. Bear in mind, Eubank Jr. had been in there against George Groves, Billy Joe Saunders, James DeGale, Korobov over in the United States. You know, he just fought Liam Williams. These are guys who you would think are bigger and stronger than Conor Benn. And if anyone's going to get Eubank Jr. out of there, you would have thought it would be someone like George Groves. Obviously, Groves doesn't push the issue in many of his fights the way that, let's say, Liam Smith does. But nevertheless, you would imagine George Groves is a much bigger puncher than Liam Smith, certainly a much bigger puncher than Conor Benn. But yet, Senior was so concerned about the Conor Benn fight. I know there's the rehydration thing and all that, but Conor Benn is the smaller guy going up. So when you're looking at it just on paper, you're thinking the smaller guy's taking a risk as well as the big guy taking a risk. As in the big guy losing the weight, the smaller guy giving up a load of weight to a much bigger man. So yeah, it's speculation on my part, of course, in terms of whether Eubank's been getting hurt or dropped in sparring, and whether that's the reason that his dad was concerned about him, and whether that's the reason that Conor Benn and Eddie Hearn were so keen on that fight. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Maybe some of you have got some info on it. Maybe some of you have read between the lines in certain interviews that Conor Benn has had, or maybe Eubank Jr. has had. Have you seen or heard any hints or sensed any hints that something has happened to him, to Eubank? And of course, even Liam Smith seemed confident that he could stop Chris Eubank. He said that these guys with great chins, in most cases, eventually their chins crack. Eventually their chins give way. But when that does happen, it's normally a case of a fighter being in loads of tough contests and the accumulative damage catches up with him and he can no longer take the kind of shot that he used to take. Whereas with Chris Eubank Jr., he hasn't really been in that many real tough fights where he's taken loads of punishment. No, he's had a couple fights where he's taken some shots, but for the most part, he manages to keep himself out of harm's way. So for his punch resistance to just go like that is very surprising to me. But it's like I said in my post-fight video, Perhaps it's a combination of things. Maybe Eubank doesn't take the kind of shot he used to take, but maybe his chin was slightly overrated all along because of the fact that he wasn't getting caught clean that often. So when he did get caught clean, maybe he was fortunate to not get caught in the sweet spot. And with Liam Smith, he is a guy that is precise with his shots. When he hits you, he's going to hit you right on the chin a lot of the time. He's someone who doesn't like to throw a load of punches. He's quality over quantity. That's the way he approaches things. And when he lands, as I say, he's landed on the knuckle, he's landed on your jaw. So it's not just the power, it's the accuracy. Landing on the vital areas, right on the sweet spot, the pressure points. So maybe that has something to do with it as well. I'm going to do a technical breakdown of what happened with Eubank Jr. in a separate video, because in my post-fight video, I was saying that perhaps Roy Jones has given Eubank Jr. some of his flaws, because Roy Jones was a flawed fighter. He traded on his athleticism a lot. And once his athleticism started to wane, he started getting knocked out. But having reviewed the stoppage again, both knockdowns, I might have to actually remix that, because I'm not sure whether Roy Jones' influence is to blame here. Because the defensive maneuvers that Eubank made or was trying to make when he got clipped on that first knockdown, he's been making moves like that his whole career. If you go back to the Nick Blackwell fight, he was, rolling and moving like that in the Nick Blackwell fight, and it worked. The same goes for the Avni Yildirim fight and, even the Liam Williams fight. So he's always been, but I guess I shouldn't count the Liam Williams fight because he was with Roy Jones for that. But if you go back pre-Roy Jones, in the fights where Eubank Jr. was boxing on the back foot, he was making those kind of moves. But maybe he just hadn't been in there, against someone as sharp as Liam Smith before and as precise, who was able to catch him in the middle of those rolls. Because that's basically what he's doing. He's shoulder rolling. And we've seen so many fighters over the years do a shoulder roll and have it backfire in spectacular fashion. I remember, not Adrian Broner. Who am I thinking of? Andre Berto, when he tried to shoulder roll against Robert Guerrero, that backfired horribly. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Be fascinated to know what you guys think regarding this possibility that Conor Benn and Eddie Hearn knew something, that they were privy to information that we weren't privy to regarding Eubank's durability or lack thereof. Let me know, people. Are you sick and tired of the mainstream mindset? Does the dogmatic conformity and pathological ignorance have you tearing your hair out in frustration? Then don't be alone. Come and join our brotherhood on Patreon. We stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. You'll gain access to my weekly topical podcast, where we take more deep dives than Jacques Cousteau on an endless variety of subjects. There's also videos, interviews, live Q&As, as well as a vast back catalogue of previous episodes, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen via the Patreon app or download in high-quality MP3. Connect with myself and hundreds of other members in our Element chat group. There's no contract, no commitment. You can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a Mickey D's McMuffin. Just head to my Patreon page via the link below this video and select the tier called the Brotherhood of Reason. I'll see you over there.